Right. Okay. Good to see you guys. And we're going to climb into the message this morning. And let's just pray first. Father, I just bring myself before you. I commit myself to you. I pray, Holy Spirit, that you would speak through me and through this message I've prepared. And Lord, we just submit ourselves to you, and we welcome the work of the Spirit in this meeting, through the worship, through the word, through prophetic words, praying for each other. We thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we are in a series called Slow Down. And we're exploring some of the core spiritual disciplines to help us to slow down, to sort of just find ourselves in a more content, peaceful space. And we can do that by applying some of the spiritual practices that Jesus practiced in his own life. And in session 1, we covered the disciplines of silence and solitude. In last week, that was session 2, we covered Sabbath. And then today we're covering the third one, which is called simplicity. It's the practice or the spiritual discipline of simplicity. And the monks, they call it frugality. I just want to take one more sip of water, and then I'll carry on. That's more like a gulp. The monks called it frugality. Secular writers and bloggers may refer to it as minimalism. I'm sure you guys have heard of that term before. And so let's start by talking about what simplicity is not. Okay, let's get that out the way. Simplicity is not an art movement or a style of architecture. You know, when people hear the word simplicity, they think of a modern home. Do you guys remember that show, Top Billing? They always show these very fancy homes, and you see some minimalistic architecture there. The homes with neat lines and where everything's nice and tidy. I think let's go to our next slide. You can see it there. All right, that's fine. You can leave it there. Sorry, next one. There we go. So there we have an example of minimalistic architecture. That's not simplicity. And then number 2, you can see on the bottom right there, it looks like Steve Jobs' home. Simplicity is not the same as living a minimalistic lifestyle. So breakthetwitch.com defines minimalism this way. They say, we define minimalism as a lifestyle practice focused on minimizing distractions that keep you from doing what matters to you. So the goal of minimalism is not a spiritual one. The goal is to benefit oneself, and it's not a bad goal. In fact, it's a really great goal, but it's not the same as the spiritual practice. You with me? So if you're going to practice simplicity for a spiritual purpose, then you have to have a spiritual goal, right? Otherwise, it's not a spiritual discipline. You with me? Now, are there benefits or other benefits besides spiritual benefits to practicing simplicity? Yes, there are. There's some fantastic benefits, which we will look at later. But those are only add-ons. They are appendages. They're not the central focus or the heart of simplicity. Number 3, you can go back to our pictures if you don't mind. Simplicity is not poverty. Simplicity is not about living with nothing. It's about living with less. You guys with me? Number 4, simplicity is not about organizing your stuff. In fact, it's the opposite. If you have to organize your stuff, that probably means that you're not practicing simplicity. Okay. Number 5, unless you're living in a very tiny place, like the first place we lived in, Adele, we lived in a granny flat after we got married. And you can imagine trying to fit all those boxes. But thank goodness I have a very organized wife, and she kept us sane in that season. I think we stayed there for about a year. That was in Thornton, in Cape Town. Simplicity, number 5, is not about owning less or doing less or decluttering your life. Those are not the end goals. They are a byproduct of the practice. Okay, so if that's not what simplicity is, then what is it? And I want to give you just a few definitions and descriptions. So let's go to our next slide. It says, the spiritual discipline of simplicity is to intentionally shed the things of this earth that are keeping you from fully experiencing the life God desires for you. And I'll read these nice and slowly so you can really catch it. You got it. Simplicity, these are definitions from different people that have written on the subject. Simplicity is letting go so that you can make more room in your life for God. It's creating margin and space in your life to breathe more freely and loose the chains of the world. I think it was Richard Foster that wrote, the Christian discipline of simplicity is inward reality that results in an outward lifestyle. It's not about giving away all of your things, but about putting your things in the right perspective. Simplicity cultivates the great art of letting go. Simplicity aims at loosening inordinate attachment to owning and having. Simplicity brings freedom and with it generosity. And I think that was written by a pastor and author named Adele Kalon. So simplicity is not an extreme way of life where we get rid of all the things that we enjoy in life. So I'm not saying to you must go and give away your hunting rifles, okay? Simplicity is about letting go of lesser things to make room for greater things. It's about refining our focus so we can give priority to things that matter most in life, like your relationship with God and your family, your friends. Simplicity is this, so we can go to the next slide. There's just some descriptions. It's living an uncluttered life, becoming more distilled as a person, creating more space in your life for God, experiencing freedom from entitlement, being able to let go, and finding your identity in God, not in things, stuff. Matthew 6, verse 19 to 21 gives us some insight into this practice. Jesus said, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust consumes and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Jesus teaches us that freedom is found not in having and doing, but in keeping God and His will at the center of your life. And in order for us to do that, some things have got to be removed from our lives, and other things have got to be pushed down our priority list. Are you with me? So you know what it is. Why do we need this practice in our lives? And I'm going to give you 4 reasons. Let's go to our next slide. Simplicity helps us to become better stewards of our money and time. It helps us to find our identity in our relationship with God instead of in the things that we consume. You know, our world has evolved into a consumer society, right? You know that. And this has changed the way that most people handle money and possessions. Are you guys familiar with the term consumerism? So consumerism is the idea that if we increase the consumption of goods and services, it's beneficial for the individual and for the economy. And I'll unpack that in a moment. And I know that I'm looking at Mark's face. It's a hot topic, this subject. And, you know, we live in this consumer society, and the question is, how do we get here? And the answer is that it's evolved over time, right? Things were different 100 years ago, and I'm going to unpack this very briefly. We'll be here all day if I give you a history of consumerism. I want to just give you just a quick snapshot. Okay. So first there was the pre-industrial revolution. Well, before the industrial revolution, things were different. Before the revolution or industrial revolution, societies or communities were mainly farming communities, and they were sustained by living off the land. Times are different. So Mark Comer says, only a century ago, 90% of Americans were farmers. Life was hard, yes, but simpler too. We mostly lived off the land and traded with our neighbors for anything else we needed. Money was rarely even used, and most of the things we owned fell into the category of needs, not wants. So consumerism wasn't yet a thing. You with me? Then came the Industrial Revolution, which took place in the 18th and 19th centuries, and this is where consumerism really began. Okay, that's when they started building factories, and that was the start of mass production. And we're gonna fast forward history. We don't have time to go into everything. You can go and research it yourself. It's actually quite interesting. So here we are today where consumerism has become deeply ingrained in our societies and around the world. We have things like online shopping, social media, and digital advertising. And these things have fueled people's desires for products and services. Digital marketing experts estimate that most Americans are exposed to 4,000 adverts per day. Isn't that quite something, eh? And so consumerism it's got its benefits, but also has its downside. So people that support consumerism will say that consumerism is a driver for economic growth, innovation, and higher living standards. But like I said, there's a downside too. Let's go to our next slide. Next one. Next one. There we go. You can stop there. So consumerism has a negative impact on the environment, of course. That can lead to overconsumption and wastage of resources. It can lead to debt and financial stress, right? That these days there can be a pressure to keep up with the trends. You just have to have the latest cell phone, for example. I mean, when I finished my last cell phone contract, I had obviously won't mention the company because the stuff goes online. I don't want to get sued or something. That cell phone company hounded me to take out another contract, right? It's like you have to have the latest thing, right? It can lead to excessive spending and debt. You with me? It can lead to, I'm not going to explain everything. It can lead to materialism and shallow values, social inequality, cultural homogenization. Basically what that means is global consumerism can lead to the spread of a standardized consumer culture throughout the world. And what that can do is that it can break down culture and traditions around the world. Because what happens is people adopt similar consumer lifestyles. So recently I listened to a podcast where Kerry Nevoff interviewed a guy named Kevin Kelly, a very interesting guy. And he's an American guy, and he moved to Asia in the 1970s. And he moved into a very remote part of Asia. He says it was like living in medieval times. It's like going into Africa, living in huts and things like that. And he says that the homes are made out of wood. They kind of blended in with the environment. There was no plumbing, there was no electricity. But he says very soon after he got there, it changed because of consumerism. Right? The shops moved in. And sorry to say, they were influenced by, I'd say, American culture. Not that I have anything against Americans. You get what I'm saying. It changed the landscape of the place. And I mention America because consumerism basically was birthed in the States and actually birthed in Britain. And it can lead to it can have a psychological impact, right? It can lead to a sense of inadequacy. In other words, I don't have this or that, therefore I'm not good enough. It's especially amongst young people. Right? I don't have that pair of shoes, so I'm not cool. Right? It can lead to an unending desire for more, which can lead to dissatisfaction and mental health issues. A restlessness. It can lead to wasteful spending, right? Bad stewardship. And I think the really bad thing about consumerism is that people are now getting their meaning from what they buy. They're actually finding their identity in what they consume. Have you guys heard that saying, I am what I wear? That's become a reality. People are literally finding their identity in what they wear, in what they consume, in what they spend their money on. A French sociologist, his name is Jean, I won't try and pronounce his surname because I will butcher it. He said that in the Western world, materialism has become the new dominant system of meaning. He argues that atheism hasn't been replaced by cultural Christianity. Shopping has. I'll take a sip of water and you can think about that. Lekker dors. So people are basically, and excuse the pun, they're literally buying into a different gospel. A gospel where money and consumption is God, not Jesus Christ. And that's not only applies to non-believers, it applies to Christians too. We must ask ourselves, have we bought into a different gospel? And it's not that we've stopped loving God or that we've renounced our faith, but how much have we been influenced by consumerism? All right, can you guys see why this is a problem? Think about the impact this is having on our spiritual lives, on people's worldview. Right? How can God have proper place in your life if consumption is king? You with me? So this is where the practice comes in. Practicing simplicity aids us in breaking the cycle or the hold of consumerism in our lives. It helps us to become better stewards of our finances and of our time. It helps us to keep God at the center, not money, not things. And I just want to say that I've got no problem with shopping. I've got no problem with anybody advertising their services or their products. I mean, how is any business or person going to sell their products without advertising? All of those things are good, but it's all about balance. I mean, our church, we advertise on social media all the time. If I can use the word advertising. We constantly promoting our events. Why? Because we want people to know about it. We want people to come and join us. There's nothing wrong with shopping or consuming or advertising. It's just how we do it. It's about finding the balance. I think what I've got a problem with is the propaganda and the manipulating tactics that are used in some of the advertising to get the consumer to buy, even if they don't need it or necessarily want it. I don't like that. You know, some advertisers, they use sales techniques to manipulate the consumer to buy. And there's a whole bunch of sneaky techniques. It's actually quite interesting if you Google it. But one of those techniques is called the bandwagon technique. Right? You've heard that saying? Right? Everybody's just jumping on the bandwagon. In other words, everybody's just doing it. And what the advertiser does is they encourage the audience or the consumer to jump on the appeal. So what the advertiser does is they use threat and fear to get the consumer to buy the product. You with me? Okay, interesting. Eh? Makes you think about advertising in a different way. So why do advertising companies do this? Well, you've got to remember that in order for mass production to work, you need people to keep on buying the goods. That's how it works. They need the consumer to keep on buying to make a profit. And this is the trap that every one of us gets caught up in. And I'm not talking about buying things that we need. I'm talking about buying things that we don't necessarily need. Right? He said, we must shift America from a needs to a desire culture. People must be trained to desire. Think about it. To want new things, even before the old have been entirely even before the old have not been entirely consumed. I mentioned the cell phone example just now. We must shape a new mentality. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. That's the agenda that drives consumerism. So let's move on. So number one, this practice helps us to, what did I say the first one was? To help us keep God at the center of our lives. Number two, it helps us to slow down, and that's the whole point of the series. Alan Fadling said, the drive to possess is an engine for hurry. And you must remember that everything that you buy costs you not just time, it costs you money. Are you with me? So for example, let's say you go and you buy that motorbike you always wanted. Right? You can't afford to buy it, but you buy it anyway because you just had to have the motorbike. Now you can't afford the monthly payments. Okay? So you've got to work more hours so that you can pay for it. You have to move faster during your day to get everything done so that you have enough time to make more money. You have to keep your bike clean. You've got to maintain it. When it breaks, you've got to fix it. And of course, you have to find time to ride it. Okay? So you're not just buying the product, you're buying, you're not just, every single thing costs you money, but also time. And by the way, if you own a motorbike, that's fine. If it brings you joy, that's fine. I'm not knocking motorbikes. This is just an example. The point is that you're not just buying the product, you spending your time on it too. And less time means more hurry. Let's move on. Number three, simplicity allows you to let go so that you can make more room in your life for God. And someone said, purpose-driven simplicity enables you to choose the essential over the secondary, the important over the urgent, the best over the good. It guides you in doing the right things at the right time and for the right amount of time. Number four, it assists you in focusing on your purpose. And of course, to focus on your purpose, you need to know what your purpose is. And if you don't know what it is, we don't have time to talk about that today. That's another sermon. But let's say, for argument's sake, you know what your purpose is. The practice of simplicity will help you to focus on your purpose. So let me take myself as an example. My purpose is, number one, to be a dedicated follower of Jesus Christ. That is my purpose, is my number one purpose in life. Don't worry, I'm coming to you, baby. Number two is to be the very best husband and father that I can be. Right? I don't know why I almost choked up there. Number three is to serve faithfully in the ministry that God has called me to do. That's my purpose in life. And this purpose in my life describes my priorities, and I order those things in the same way, 1 to 3. It's God, family, ministry, or work. That should be our list, our order. And so by knowing my priorities and the order of importance, I know which roles and tasks in my life deserve the most amount of time and attention and which deserve less. So for example, my work hours are semi-flexi. I say semi-flexi because there are always certain things to get done every week, but I manage my own time, basically. And so I've got a set time in the day when I have to stop working, or I should stop working, so that I can be present to my family. So what happens is I stop working at a certain time. My Adele's home. She comes home with the kids, and she starts cooking supper in the late afternoon. We eat quite early, and during that time, I'll use my job to look after the kids. So I spend time with them. I play with them while she cooks supper, and then after that, it's the bath and the bed routine. And by doing that every single day, my priorities are in order. But let's say it's time to stop working, but I keep on working, which I have done sometimes. I try not to do it. And the kids are shouting for my attention, and Adele's she's trying to cook supper, and the kids are trying to get her attention too. That's not right. My priorities are out of order. So knowing my priorities, knowing my purpose, helps me to know what's important and where I should be applying my time. All right, you with me? And the same would go for you. So let's move into the the last part of this message. So you know what simplicity is? You know why it's valuable. Thirdly, how do we practice simplicity? You need to know the why in order to do the what and the how. You with me? I mentioned last week Simon Sinek wrote a book in 2009, a best-selling book, The Power of Why. That's the first question that you need to ask. All right. You need a reason. You need an end goal. Bill Hybels said, there's no point in simplifying your life if you're steering toward an end point that doesn't matter to begin with. You need a reason for what you're doing, right? The same would apply to our church. We need a reason. We need a vision. We need a reason for meeting, right? We need what is our vision? What is the purpose? That's what drives everything. Number 2, we're going to move through these quickly before you fall asleep, is know your purpose and remind yourself of your purpose. Right? We are forgetful creatures by nature. We need reminders. Someone said, my schedule is far less about what I want to get done and far more about who I want to become. Number 3, practice minimalism with your possessions. So like I said, the aim is not to own less. The goal is to be a good steward of what you have. And this practice will give you more time for the other priorities in your life and will help you to attach less identity to your things. Right? A lot of people, especially in the West, are attached to their things. I'm watching a series on Netflix at the moment called The Tiny House Nation, where people are moving into tiny homes, right? And I watched one, I think yesterday or the other day, where there's this couple, they were living in this massive condo, and they moved into a tiny house. But now they've got all this stuff that they had to sort out, and they had to really downsize to move. I think it was, I forget now, but it was a minute little place. But it's just such a good illustration of how we can sort of excessively accumulate stuff over time. Hey? Okay, that's all part of consumerism. Let's move on. I think this practice also helps us to be generous. I think it's a good idea to go through our homes from time to time and to look at what we don't need. Ask yourself, when last did I use that thing? If you haven't used that thing in the past year, it might be a good idea to give it to somebody, to go, to bless somebody. At my friend's church in Cape Town, they have a system in the church where the families they share clothes. These are what do you call it? Parents with young children, and they grow so fast. You look again and their feet have grown, and you've got to buy new shoes, and that's going to cost money to buy new shoes. Well, they've got a system in the church where they just give each other clothes and shoes. I think it's a really fantastic idea. Hey? Number 4 is avoid debt. We're not going to talk about that. They're self-explanatory. Debt is a real barrier to living the simple life. Shall I give you a quote? Simplicity gives the freedom to concentrate on what matters most. Debt destroys it. Huh? All right. So this is going to take too much time if we go into too much detail. Number 5 is declutter your digital life. I'll take another sip so you can think about this. So I've talked to you quite a bit in the series about technology and its impact on our lives. And technology is wonderful, but it's very invasive. And we need to tidy up our digital lives, because by doing that we regain the ability to focus on the important things like family, God, reading a good book. When last did you read a good book? Well, I want to give you just a few tips to help you to declutter. All right. Number 1 is purge or clean out your email inbox. These are very practical tips. You get those newsletters from so-and-so, or you get those adverts from certain companies. Unsubscribe from anything that you're not really keen on. You with me? Because when you do that, then anything important that comes in, or any email that comes into your inbox is either important, or it's from a friend, or it's from a family member, or it's work related, depending on that email address. So, for example, instead of getting that newsletter from so and so, why not go on their website instead? Right? You don't have to get the newsletter. Or instead of getting the latest specials from that shopping company, go on their website. You don't have to get newsletters, and it crams up your inbox. Number 2, turn off unwanted app notifications. I've done that. So I've turned off a whole bunch of notifications. I haven't done that for every app on my phone, but that's another good thing that you can do. Get rid of apps altogether and use your browser on your phone, or use your computer. Right? If you use social, if you're addicted to social media, this might be a good move for you. Right? If you got the social media apps on your phone, it can be really tempting to go on social media throughout the day, which is actually a big waste of time. The next one is stick to one or two social networks. If you're on like 4 or 5 social networks, it can really clutter up your brain. The next one is put your phone away. So for me, Saturday is my family day. So yesterday morning, what did I do? I turned my phone off so that I could be present to my family. And then later on in the afternoon, I turned my phone on again. Put your phone away. The next one is change your zoning out routine. Guilty. So plenty of people, including myself, use their phone as a way to zone out and relax at certain points of the day. Right? You grab your phone for a bit of mindless browsing or social media scrolling. Right? You know those moments where you're just tired and you just don't want to think a bit? No? You grab your phone. But by doing that, you're adding to the mental clutter. You with me? You want to empty your mind. You don't want to add to your mind. And so maybe instead of spending time on your phone, do something else. Read a book. Bake some bread. Something I enjoy doing is just taking one of our garden chairs, putting that outside on my stoop. I sound like an old man, and drinking a cup of coffee. Sometimes just for 10 minutes instead of sitting on my phone. I haven't got it right. My wife will tell you, I haven't got this right, but I am trying. And we're having a lot of conversations about this because I know for myself, I want to make some life changes. We've many times butted heads. I'm sorry, I'm including you. There's many times we've butted heads over that phones, these phones. It's like, I want to talk to you. Like, get off your phone. Technology is invasive. I'm going to end quite soon. Schedule your time. I like somebody said, put in your big rocks before your small ones. I like that. Put in your big rocks before your small ones. Are you with me? You need to schedule your week and your days. You have to create blocks of time for your most important tasks. So in my case, it's sermon prep. Sermon prep takes the vast amount of time in my week. And I've got to make sure that I have enough time for sermon prep. Otherwise, I get caught out like last week when I ended up working my sermon on the Saturday instead of spending time with my family. Now, that's my big one. So if you prioritize your big rocks, you will still have time to get the small ones done. But if you're always going after the small rocks, putting out fires and tackling, when you're living in a reactionary way, tackling whatever lands on your desk, you will never be in line with your purpose. Are you with me? That's a good piece of advice. Tackle the big rocks first. Number 7, have a regular routine. It's so easy to slip into autopilot. Life can do this to you. It can pull you left and right, up and down, and you just go with it. Routine keeps you disciplined and helps you to live the simple life. And by the way, let me just remind you that the ultimate purpose of all this is to simplify your life so that you can have more time with Jesus, more time with your friends, more time with your family. Okay. Number 8, I'm coming to close, is learn to say no. This is a popular mantra in life is to go big. Hey, I'm going big this weekend, eh? You've heard that saying, and we know what that means. But the mantra of the simple life is the opposite. It's go small. When you practice simplicity, you won't necessarily do less in general, but you're going to be doing less of everything that doesn't help you achieve your purpose and do what matters most. So instead of trying to do everything, rather concentrate on a handful of purpose-driven priorities. Okay, I spoke to you a while back about John Maxwell. He's only got about 3 things that he gives his most of his time and energy to, right? Because those 3 things are in line with his purpose. That's a good way to live. But in order to keep this narrow focus, you've got to be ruthless in saying no to anything that's not aligned with your purpose. You with me? I'm hearing a yawn. It's time to close. So you're not only going to say no to people who ask you things, you're going to have to say no to the urge of checking your phone while you're working or while you're with your family. You'll have to say no to the bad stuff, sin. You have to say no to laziness. Saying no to one thing is saying yes to another thing. You add to your life by subtracting. That's the principle. And I'm going to close with this, with a quote. Someone once said, "One yes must be defended over time by 1,000 no's." And that's me. Done.